Hello, welcome back to B&J's Little Farm. Today is Shelf Saturday. Ooh, I almost fell out of the chair. And we are on chapter 9. Okay, gotta turn off my volume. It says I've got one in the chat. We'll wait a couple of minutes, see if anybody else pops in. And then we'll get started. Oh, we got Christina in the house. Hello, how are you? Hope you're doing well. We are reading Wings of a Dream, and we are on chapter 9. I'm just waiting for a couple more people to pop in. I don't know if anybody will pop in or not, since this wasn't really a scheduled live. I said I was going live, but I didn't know what time. Alright, I'm going to just go ahead and get started, and if people pop in, that's alright. Or if they watch the replay, that's okay too. It will be kind of hard for me to keep an eye on the chat, so you can talk amongst yourselves. But I'm going to go ahead and get started on chapter 9. The children and I hurried across the mushy ground as the sun peeked out from behind the clouds the next morning. We milked old Bob, fed the chickens, and turned the mules and horse into the corral after filling their troughs with feed. But we didn't stay long in the barn. Too much sunshine to be enjoyed, and I decided it was time to do laundry. I filled one tin tub with shirts and pants, skirts and dresses. Our clothing swam beneath browning water as I pushed up the sleeve of an old calico workday dress. I'd stuffed in the bottom of my suitcase for just such a chore. Beneath the heavy kettle in the fire pit, I lit the kindling, adding in the newspaper from last night until the larger logs caught the flame. We took turns filling the pot with buckets of water from the christen. The sun toasted my neck and shoulders as I scrubbed clothes against washboard and fed each piece through the wringer. Squeals of laughter filled in the air. I stretched my back and gazed into the expanse above my head. Hey, Dr. Oddity. Hey, Gemma. Good to see you guys. Thanks for coming in. She says, hey, Jess, sis, and my favorite Mr. Barrett.
Hey, Gemma.
Did the quarantine mean Arthur didn't fly, or was he in the sky this very minute? I'd read a newspaper story about an airplane that crash-landed in someone's yard. As the boys in the plane brushed themselves off, the family invited them in for dinner. What if Arthur fell out of the sky? Would he survive with just a few bumps and bruises? A hawk soared a lazy circle high above my head. I prayed the wings of Arthur's plane held as sure, and that if he came crashing down in anyone's yard, it would be mine. When the sun stopped high overhead, I doused the children's mud-caked feet with water, then wiped an arm across my damp forehead. Wet clothes remained to be hung on the line. Heavy work I didn't think could be accomplished while keeping a close eye on the children. I think y'all need naps this afternoon. Groans answered me from all except Janie. She clapped her hands and wrinkled her nose in an ear-to-ear grin. I didn't imagine she'd understand what I had said, but it helped all the same. I rushed our cornbread and molasses lunch, noting that I must explore the cellar later and find us something different to eat. After sending the children to bed, I lifted wet fabric from the basket to line, until my shoulders ached and our clothes flapped. Yet, in spite of my weariness, my hands and feet moved with the nervous energy of a horse before a race. All my life, I watched shining bays and dapple grays run the crude track outside of Downingtown on the 4th of July. I watched them dance at the starting line, eager to be off, watched them surge forward at the sound of the starting shot and run until they reached the finish line. My starting line stretched before me. Now, the coming of Mama's telegram or Arthur's letter calling to me would be the gunshots that would send me running towards my destination. A track filled with tasks more magnificent than mucking out stalls, scrubbing laundry, or weeding a family sized garden. But I kept my promise and take care of things here until then. With the last clothespin in place, I explored the kitchen. I found middle full sacks of flour and sugar, as well as a few canned goods behind the cabinet doors, and of course the full sack of cornmeal. I'd glimpsed the empty garden just beyond the house. I hoped to find vegetables crowding the cellar shelves, ready for winter consumption. Should that be the case, we'd have plenty of variety in the coming days. I lit a small lantern and tugged on a heavy wooden door leading into the belly of the earth. Truth be told, I hated cellars, except during a twister, of course. The big door fell back and smacked the ground. Lantern held aloft. I descended the steps. Crude shelves lined the walls. I held the light higher and peered into the first bushel basket. Green beans! A barrel beside the shelf brimmed with potatoes, squash, onions, turnips, some peas, and ears of corn. Bundled herbs hung from the wooden rafters. I grabbed handfuls of green beans and potatoes, gathering my apron skirt into a kind of sack for my treasures. Back in the sunshine, I blew out the lantern. The thought of green beans and potatoes cooked with salt pork I noticed in the kitchen stirred my appetite and set me racing for the kitchen. Then a high-pitched beeping caught my attention. Sheriff Jeffrey's car bounced along the grass at the side of the house. My heart leaped. Never had I thought the arrival of a sheriff would thrill my soul, but I was starting to look forward to Sheriff Jeffrey's visits. I raised my head to wave before remembering the load I carried. Beans and potatoes spilled onto the back porch. I brushed dirt from my apron and met the sheriff in the yard. "Where's the kids?" "Sleeping. At least I hope they are." His mouth turned down for a moment, and he plucked something from his pocket. "This is for you." He handed me a telegram. My heart pumped, wild with joy, until I read the ticket tape word on the page. "Mama's sick. Stay put. Letter coming soon. Love, Daddy." My feet paced as I read the words again. Mama sick? How sick? Spanish flu sick? I sat hard on the edge of the porch and leaned my head against the pillar, holding the roof above my head. I forced the words in front of my eyes once more. "What's wrong?" The sheriff's Adam's apple bobbed as his hat began its familiar dance in his hands. "My mama's sick." Saying the words out loud made it so much more real. Tears stung behind my eyes. I couldn't look into his face. "What are you saying?" My gaze met his. "I'm worried about her." His eyes narrowed. "Won't your daddy take care of her?" "Of course he will, but I might." I looked back at the black letters on the white paper. "Daddy said stay here, but didn't Mama need me? You're not going to leave these kids, are you? Isn't that why you came here?" My head jerked in his direction. I didn't even know about them when I came here. I thought Aunt Annabelle would be better quickly. I waved my hand and squeezed my eyes shut. It doesn't matter what I thought. "But you will stay, won't you?" A raising voice, a slackened face, panic clear as crystal. I captured my tiding emotions, returning them to solid and upright once more. "Can't someone around here care for the children until their father comes home?" The sheriff shook his head back and forth, like a swing pushed into motion, with no one to still it. "I don't think so. Everyone around here has more than their share of burdens right now. What with the war and the influenza? And what about Frank's livestock? You can't just walk off and leave. This isn't my responsibility. I pulled in a deep breath and stood as tall as I could. Still, I had to tilt my head back to see his face. He slapped his hat against his thigh. I expected any kin of Annabelle's to do as she would do, her Christian duty. I flinched. How dare he imply I was less of a Christian than my aunt? My fist clenched tight as my lips pressed into one another. With a toss of my head, I forced my body to relax, as if I hadn't a care in the world. Of course, I'll stay and take care of the children, at least until their father says otherwise, or until Daddy says to come home, or Arthur asks me to be his bride. I swept up the porch steps, ignoring the beans and the potatoes scattered at my feet. Now, if you'll excuse me, I must put supper on the table for these precious children. The sheriff jammed his hat on his head, his face red all the way to his ears. I'll be back when I can, but almost every house has influenza now. Doc's blurry-eyed. I'm trying to help him out. I noticed Ollie Elizabeth then, stealing along the side porch, finally sitting at the corner. Sheriff Jeffries' expression gentled. He reached into his pocket, this time extracting 4 peppermint sticks. Share these with the others. He handed them to Ollie before stalking to his car and puttering away. Frustration tempted me to stomp and scream, but I refrained. Even so, I had no intention of staying in this place for months on end. I refused to get stuck on yet another farm. I was 19 years old. Wasn't I entitled to make my own decision, to live the life I desired? I peered down the road that led to the train station. My dreams hovered close, like a dust cloud approaching from the horizon. If Arthur couldn't come to me, I'd go to him. Prater's Junction was far close to him than Downington, no matter the circumstances. We got 5 in the house. Awesome. My attention returned to Ollie. She stared in my direction. Her head... I lost my place. My attention returned to Ollie. She stared in my direction. Her head cocked, her eyes narrowed. Did you sleep? I asked. She didn't answer. Are the others awake? Not yet. Ollie licked her candy. Miss Ada and Mama wouldn't have made me lie down with the little kids. Is that so? I gathered the beans and potatoes into my apron skirt again. Ollie sucked her sweet for a little while before she answered, yes. The defiance in her tone irritated me. I opened my mouth to answer back, but forced the words to stay locked behind my lips. 9. She's only 9, I reminded myself. I sat back down beside her. She scooted to the furthest edge of the step. I wondered how much she'd heard of my conversation with the sheriff. Little feet pattered the porch behind us. James had even managed to drag Janie down with him. I didn't want to know how. Ollie handed them each a peppermint stick. Grins erupted as quickly as rainbows after a storm. As I carried the vegetables inside and scrubbed them free of dirt, I thought about Mama. I should have known something was wrong. Mama would have answered the telegram right away. And what about Arthur? He must have received the first letter I sent, the one I mailed on the train ride to Texas. Wouldn't he, too, have answered immediately if he was able? After a glance at the children still on the porch, I ran to the mailbox outside the front gate. I hadn't heard anyone arrive or leave except Sheriff Jeffries. But I'd been in the cellar for a while. My letter to Arthur had disappeared. In its place were the Dallas Morning News and a farming magazine. I peered into the empty box for more. Nothing. Can I take those inside? James asked with outreached hands. I gave him the newspaper and magazine. He bounded up the stairs and into the house, and screen door slamming shut behind him. A hand yanked at my skirt. I'm hungry, Becca. Dan's sticky face stared up at me. I sighed and led him inside. Until God sent me elsewhere, I would do my best by these children. right, that's the end of chapter 9. You guys want another chapter? Let me know in the chat. If you want another chapter, I'll continue. If not, we'll go ahead and end the live stream here. And I'll wait for your answers. That's weird. YouTube says 5 are watching, and StreamYard says 3. Alright, you guys, we're going to go ahead and end it here. I want to thank you so much for taking time to come out to this live and reading Wings of a Dream with me. I hope you enjoyed it. And next Saturday, we will be on chapter 10. So I will see you then. Stay happy, healthy, and safe. Bye.